Hey guys, Dave Norona here, and I'm super jazzed because I just got back from a wicked ride. All honesty, we'd be out actually on the snow. It's November 23rd, sledding and skiing, but the snow is late to come. And the trails are mint, so riding continues and getting in shape for winter. And the e-bikes are awesome for that. For those of you who don't know me, I am an e-bike connoisseur. I have been riding them since 2017. I've spent over 35,000 kilometers on mostly the Devinci e-bikes, and it's all I ride now. So today I really wanted to take you through the E-Troy and the E-Spartan, and I wanted to wait till I got enough miles on them to make a fair comparison, so I can give you an idea of maybe if you're looking at these bikes, which one you might choose. Because to me, even it was confusing at first why they even made the E-Troy, but after spending time on it, it's become one of my favorite bikes, and I'll tell you why. So when we look at the E-Troy and the E-Spartan, we're going to go over the bikes a little bit. They both use a Shimano motor. They both have a 725 watt-hour battery that slides in and out of the frame super easy, so you can have a spare battery. The E-Troy is a 160 mil travel bike. I've actually bumped mine up to a 170 with a Zeb on the front. And the E-Spartan is a 180 mil travel bike. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself and the background that I come from. I come from 16 years of racing as a pro for mountain biking and adventure racing, 24-hour endurance, over 500 events around the world, from everything from running, cross-country skiing, mountain biking, and adventure racing. And then when I retired, I sort of got into moto and trials, and e-bikes actually kind of brought me back into the bike industry. I was riding a little bit, but nowhere near as what I was doing, obviously, when I was racing. And since getting back into e-bikes late 2017 and getting on Devinci, I've spent over 1,000 K a month, over 35,000 kilometers ridden on e-bikes, and it's all I ride. And they're super addicting, and I live in Squamish, so I ride every day, every morning. And we'll take you through the two bikes and the differences. So because I kind of come from XC, when we were racing, when we would go train, usually our bikes, we'd just put a bigger fork on a sort of race type bike. And that way we can go out and train and still ride hard trails, but the transitions, especially in the front, were helped instead of riding a 3-inch travel bike that we do in races, we could put on a 5-inch, and then we could actually manage ourselves a little bit better on the trails, especially on the North Shore. And so I kind of grew up that, and anybody who knows, who's come from racing, pedaling a bike, once the bike started to get bigger and more slack, they kind of weren't as fun to ride, especially uphill. And that's changed to some degree, but you still feel that pedal bob. And someone who comes from racing will feel that over someone who's just started and gets on a new enduro bike. You won't feel that as much of that energy sucking. And we're talking about regular bikes here. And so that's why we have always, or people that come from sort of the similar background as me, has always taken a kind of a shorter travel bike and put a bigger fork on it. Just feels better to pedal up. And then, of course, you get the magic for going down, the bigger suspension. The kind of changes with e-bikes is when I first got into them, I was like, why would you get anything other than a full power bike with big suspension? Because they ride up the same. You can ride up super hard stuff. When you go to descend, though, you've got all the things you want on a bike. The best tires, the biggest suspension, everything works really well. And that's the way I feel about e-bikes. We see a lot of lightweight e-bikes and people get into them. Really, a lot of that is ego. People think they don't need a full power bike. You can always turn these down if you want, but I never do. I run full boost all the time. And that's the way you're going to get the best training effect, the best cardio out of it, and the most fun out of the bike. And to me, a lightweight bike is just less power. So you can get away with it until you ride with someone with full power, and then you're going to be dropped. So that's why I ride these bikes, and I don't even look at lightweight e-bikes. However, I will say that this E-Troy is like a lightweight e-bike without being half the power in the motor and half the battery. It feels totally different than the E-Spartan, and it really took riding a lot of these bikes to actually figure that out and see that it's actually just like before. This is like an XC bike, and this is kind of like closer to a downhill enduro bike. or is an enduro bike, but closer to that downhill capabilities. And I've spent about 4,000, just over 4,000 kilometers on the E-Spartan this season. This is a fairly new one. I have about 600K on that, and one that I had all season. And then I have about 1,800K on the E-Troy. So I feel now that I can make a pretty good, the differences of the bikes have. So one thing that I love about this bike when I started to ride it was how quick it feels. It's so snappy and quick, and that's kind of like the shorter wheelbase. Everything's a little more compact. When you get out of the saddle and sprint on this, it like feels like you're sprinting on a regular bike because it's not so slack, and it's very, very responsive. I thought it wouldn't be as good on the descents, hence why I put a 170 Zeb on the front. But man, this bike just wants to be thrown around, and it feels way lighter. It's not any lighter, but it feels way lighter when you ride it. And I absolutely love that about it. Now, one of the things I noticed is when I started riding this, I almost felt like tireder and more sore. And that is because just like riding an XC bike, you can ride it just as hard, but it is more vibration, more into your arms, more feedback that your body has to handle. And you definitely notice that with this bike. It's not a bad thing. That's kind of feedback that coming from racing, and how if you like to ride, that's a really good thing rather than it all just getting sucked up in suspension. And so I absolutely love this bike for that reason, and I've been riding it literally all fall, and just a magical bike. On the other end of the spectrum is there's more, this bike is way more forgiving. Coming from XC, the weaker part of me was really the gnarly trails that are just getting gnarlier now with all the young kids, but I can ride more of them because of this bike. And really I like riding up super hard stuff and then riding down hard stuff. And trying to keep up with those young kids, to some degree, just riding that stuff. And the E-Spartan is like my go-to bike. If for sure where I live, from riding to the shore to Squamish to Whistler, Pemberton, and elsewhere, if I had one bike, would be at the E-Spartan. It climbs really well. It descends amazingly. It is not as snappy as the E-Troy. But, you know, am I looking for snappiness out of a bike? Not really. I am really looking for a bike that just loves to flow through the trails. And this bike just puts a huge smile on your face. So there's a few differences. I will tell you, like, both bikes are pretty much the same. They're set up the same with one-up bar, 42 mil stem, and I changed to a one-up dropper. I run Cush cores and Assegai tires, Maxxis Assegai tires on every bike, the same. I just put a new tire on this bike, absolutely the best tire out there for grip, and who cares about rolling resistance? You're on an e-bike, and Cush cores in them. This is the magic setup for e-bikes because you'll never get a flat. I haven't had a flat in 4 years. I don't even carry stuff to fix a flat. And the Cush cores never had a dinged rim, never had a flat, never destroyed anything. They just work flawless, and they're really easy to install once you learn how to do them and do the proper way. And as you can see, these bikes are set up pretty much the same way. So that's a little bit about it. If you have any questions or comments, throw them in down below, and I'll get back to you on them. But if you live in an area that doesn't have super gnarly stuff, it's got really fast rolling up and down, and sometimes that kind of riding is harder because you seem to be climbing all the time and quick descents, climbing and quick descents, then the E-Troy would be my bike of choice. If you live more where I do, where there's a lot of rocks and drops and janky stuff and hard trails, the E-Spartan is where it's at. And you can't go wrong with either bike. You can kind of made like I have. I put the Zeb on the 170, and it kind of brought this bike closer to this bike than it would with the 36 or the, also comes with a 38 if you get the GX build. And you can do that, you can choose. So that 38 would be kind of the same lines that I've with the Zeb on the front here, and you can bump that up to 170, or you can keep it at 160, and it's going to just be a little bit snappier. If you get the 36 on it that comes with the XT build, then you'll actually see that even be a little bit lighter. and I think more snappier. But I wanted a bike that was kind of closer to this one, and but again, a little bit tighter and quicker, and that is exactly what this will actually make you corner better. This will make you a better descender. This will make you a better cornerer, and still do everything. You can do anything. Really, it's the rider that it comes down to. So when I can't do something, it's got nothing to do with the bike. It's all about me. So that hopefully is a little bit. You'll also notice there's a coilover versus an air shock. Now I've been through a lot of Devinci e-bikes, and I use both. I love both. Again, the plushness of the coilover is you just can't beat it. The adjustability with the air and the quickness, the feel, again, that snap. If you're looking for that, this is where you're going to go on that bike, right? So quicker turning, faster, quicker suspension. And if you're looking for more loose, fast, softer, raked out, the E-Spartan is your jam. So really, you can't go wrong. As you know, I love e-bikes. If you have any questions about e-bikes and why I love them, put them in the comments below. And all that matters is get out and ride. And hope we get some more snow up in the mountains so we can be out on the sleds and skis. We'll see you out there.